the overall game. I mean, a lot of people will obviously talk about the refereeing decisions, and obviously that plays a factor. But I look at the stats. I wrote them down. Right, 67% possession we had, 17 shots on goal, and only 4 on target. That is not enough to win a football match. And if we're being truthful, how many times did we actually test Nick Pope? But then at the same time, we'll talk about the referee, because that referee, mate, giving out yellow cards if he was breathing. Do you know what I mean? It's madness, absolute madness. And I get that it was for both teams, and I understand that. He was consistently bad for both teams. But with the way that we play, it makes it very difficult for us to come out and impose ourselves in that second half, because when you've got Martin Odegaard and Granit Xhaka, and I believe Thomas Partey as well, all on yellow cards, you can't press as high as you want to and win the ball back in the final third, because all it takes is for one of them players, Granit Xhaka being a prime example, to make a little bit of a rash challenge trying to win the ball high up, and all of a sudden you're down to 10 men. So it became difficult from that sense, because ultimately we couldn't allow Newcastle to come on to us a little bit and then try and hit them on the counter and win the ball high up to open up the spaces. But then in saying that, I also think Mikel Arteta made the wrong substitution. I think that game was crying out for Kieran Tierney, because we was playing so much through the middle of the pitch that it was easy for Newcastle, and we needed the width. Now, if it was me, I understand he had to bring off Ben White. Ben White looked knackered, but I would have brought on Kieran Tierney. I would have took off Granit Xhaka. I would have allowed Zinchenko to stay in the midfield and control the midfield. And then I would have looked for Kieran Tierney to run beyond Martinelli to create, 1v1s. So maybe he can get his defender a little bit more. But Bukayo Saka and Martinelli both got doubled up on tonight, because we didn't have any overlapping fullbacks. At the same time, though, I also feel a bit for Mikel Arteta, because apart from bringing on Kieran Tierney, what did we have on the bench that could change the game? Absolutely nothing. And this is why, Northside, me and you, and to a degree, I suppose, Fuad has been saying it as well, we need to strengthen this window. We don't have any options. Gabriel Jesus is out injured, fair enough. Eddie Nketiah is doing a fairly decent enough job. He scored in 2 of the last 3 games. So you can say he's doing a decent-ish job covering for him. But when it comes to bringing players off the bench, and when it comes to being in a tight game like we was tonight and needing to freshen it up a little bit, we got nothing. Absolutely nothing. So that Mudryk deal needs to get done ASAP. I mean, look, I don't know anything about the player. I don't watch the Ukrainian league. I don't know if he's worth £70 million. But at the end of the day, if he's going to give us another attacking option and someone who can come off the bench and make an impact, why not? Same with João Felix. Get him in the door. If Eddie Nketiah is not doing the business, you take him off, you bring on João Felix. All of a sudden, you're creating more fear into opposition. Do you know what I mean? And I think if you've got somebody like Mudryk, somebody like João Felix coming off that bench tonight, I think we win that game. Because let's be honest, we controlled the majority of it, and Newcastle didn't really do anything in the final third. But we just didn't finish our dinner. We didn't finish our chances. And the problem is now, it's very important next 2 games. Very, very important. And I don't think people realise this. Yes, we're 8 points clear at the top of the Premier League. Could have been 10 points. Obviously, City have got to play their game against Chelsea on Thursday. I believe City will win that game. And I ain't too worried about Chelsea anyway. But if we lose to Spurs, and a lot of people are saying, "No, we won't lose to Spurs because Spurs are so dreadful this season." But they're also forgetting that we have a horrendous record away at Tottenham. Horrendous record away at Tottenham. So that's not going to be as easy of a game as what people think. We've also then got to play an informed Manchester United at our stadium. Again, not as much of an easy game as what people might think. If we happen to lose them 2 games, all of a sudden, Manchester City are overtaking us. Manchester United could well be a couple of points behind us. Newcastle could be a couple of points behind us. And then all of a sudden, we've gone from being in a title race and fans being confident that we're winning or going to win the league to all of a sudden being dragged back into a top 4 race. And that is how much of a fine margin it is. Because I believe after that, we've got to play Everton. And then we've got to play Manchester City. So it's a very, very important month coming up. And we need strength in depth. If we don't get that strength in depth, forget title race, we could well be back in the top 4 race. Do you know what I mean?
Bro, I agree with everything you just said, bro. And listen, as dreadful as Tottenham have been, if they have Romero back this week, they're able to nullify us in the way that Newcastle can. That's the type of manager that Conte is. He can shit his way out into a 0-0. A 0-0 for us when we're in a title challenge isn't good enough. Especially back-to-back 0-0s. We're in a title challenge. Man City ain't that far off of us. You know what I mean? We had the chance to be 10 points clear of them. And look, so at the end of the day, as bad as Spurs are, they could be more than happy to just get a 0-0. That's not good enough for us.
Well, let's think about it as well, right? Let's be honest. And I know Deji ain't going to like me saying this, but Spurs ain't doing nothing this season. I think ultimately most Tottenham fans and even Tottenham themselves have probably, reserved themselves to say, look at how many points they're behind Arsenal, Manchester City, even Manchester United right now. Yeah. And Man United have got game in hand as well. Let's be honest. I don't see Tottenham making the top 4 this season. I don't think they're going to do anything. I definitely don't think they're winning Champions League. I mean, Deji, man, like, sort your life out, bro. You're 45-minute FC, you just got slapped up by Aston Villa, and you think you could beat Real Madrid. Are you having a laugh? Do you know what I mean? But push that to one side. Tottenham are our neighbours, not our rivals, because I would never say they're our rivals because they don't win anything. But the point is they're our neighbours. What's the best thing that they can achieve this season? Fucking our season up. And literally, like you just said, they shithouse their way to a 0-0 draw, which is quite possible because, as you just said, Conte plays to a very similar way to how Newcastle played tonight. Sit deep, defend well, try and hit on the counter. If we draw against them, or even if they beat us, which ain't out the realms of possibility as well, because let's be honest, they've got Harry Kane, yeah, and Saliba's been a bit the past few games as well. Then all of a sudden, like I said, our season doesn't look as great as what it should look. Because let's be honest, we have been the best side in the Premier League this season. We have played the best football this season. We deserve to be in a title race. But it's fine margins in the Premier League and it's fine margins in football. You start to lose a couple of games, drop a few points here and there where you shouldn't be dropping points, then that... Because at the moment, I don't necessarily feel like we've got a lot of pressure on us. Because even now, even though we're 8 points clear at the top of the Premier League, there's still not that many people that expect us to go on and win it. City are still technically the favourites in this. So we haven't got that added pressure. All of a sudden, you drop a few points, you lose a few games, you haven't got the strength in depth to change games and that. You start to get dragged back into this top 4 race. All of a sudden, pressure's on. Because we look at last season and how we should have finished 4th, ended up finishing 5th. That's going to be in the back of the players' minds. And they're going to be thinking, well, fuck me, we're back in this position again. And then you don't know from there, Arsenal could bottle it again. So fine.